Pamela Anderson returns to the screen in a role that's sort of a mixture of what made her famous and what her life looks like now. The Last Showgirl is an emotional drama, so are you going to want to watch? A seasoned showgirl must plan for her future when her show abruptly closes after a 30-year run. In addition to Pamela Anderson, this stars Brenda Song, Kiernan Shipka, Jamie Lee Curtis, Billie Lourd, and Dave Bautista. And just like the very brief synopsis stated, this takes place in Vegas as a long-running showgirl review shuts down, leaving all of the dancers to seek new roles, with some of the older cast struggling to figure out what's next. Now, there's a certain tragic beauty to the movie. It's predominantly shot using this handheld method, creating constant movement with the camera. It's not shaky cam, but it is very noticeable that the camera just seemingly never stops moving. This also looks like it's shot on film, so it's got a grainy presentation that creates a subtle aged look to the whole thing, and it then matches a ton of the aesthetics that surround the story. Now, Pamela Anderson's home, it is stuck in the 70s or 80s. I mean, it feels like it belongs in Vegas. It's a bit gaudy and was probably expensive or high class at one point, but now it feels more low rent and drastically outdated. And the show that she performs in, it is barely shown to us, but we do see the costume changes and the outfits that the performers wear, again, appearing exactly how you might imagine an old school Vegas showgirl might dress, complete with the feathery hats and the massive wings, all encrusted then with fake jewels. Something awesome that the film quality captures is the lighting. When the sun hits the lens, it creates beautiful flares, enhancing the backlighting of a lot of the characters. Now, for the performances, Anderson is captivating, but she also verges on frustrating thanks to her denial of the impending reality. She convincingly creates a character who is stuck in the past, just longing for the glory days when she was the young star, now full of regret, sadness, and loneliness, while also struggling to get by. And her dialogue delivery, it's kind of a high-pitched whisper. I mean, she's not whiny, but she definitely rests in those upper octaves when it comes to her tone. And because of her whispery intonation, sometimes she's a little hard to hear, while other times, I mean, she's very audible, but also coming across as kind of this mix of ditzy and mournful. I mean, no matter the vibe, though, that she was giving off, I always felt a certain sympathy for her. I mean, yeah, she had made decisions to be where she was, but there's also this dreadful realism to her plight. She's chosen a career path that she loved and excelled at, and did it for a really long time, but now finds herself out of that job and not qualified or even sought after for other gigs. There's a scene with her auditioning where all of this comes to a head, and while it's devastating, Anderson is just wonderful to watch. Kiernan Shipka and Brenda Song are other dancers alongside Anderson, but they're on the much younger side, and the balance and dichotomy that they bring to the plot is excellent as we get to see different facets and phases of their line of work that's displayed between them. Now, Shipka is the younger, more endowed, and more apt to get any part, while Song, still young, just not nearly as much as Shipka, she's also not very curvy, making it more difficult to get a gig when she competes against the likes of Shipka. Now, I appreciate the attitude and the tone that they bring to the story. They're not glassy-eyed and naively disillusioned. They understand change and why it's needed, and then how to go after it. And they take on a role of wanting to be mothered by Anderson, but also resenting any sense of parenting or advice that comes as if, they're just her moody teenagers. Now, we don't get a lot of background on either of them, and while it's not hugely important, there is one poignant scene between Shipka and Anderson that was desperately calling out for more context. And we can infer some, but there's more depth that could have made it an even more emotionally demanding sequence. Now, I love Jamie Lee Curtis's addition to the cast. She's this aging cocktail server at a casino, and she's rocking a look that shows how desperately she is trying to hold on to relevance, or at least attention. I mean, she's got this Joan Jett sort of hairstyle, somewhat feathered and long-ish. Instead of black, it's a harsh red. And she wears this silverish lipstick and really comes across as though her heyday was in the late 70s and early 80s, and she never moved past it. Her inclusion in the story works as sort of a future cautionary tale for Anderson, illustrating what life could be like if she doesn't make some sort of change in her career or life. Now, Curtis doesn't have a ton of screen time, but she does provide a scene that is quite brave. I mean, she shows her body, not in some sexualized or voyeuristic manner, but we're privy to this aged hostess who is doing her best to flaunt what she has left. And rounding out the cast is Dave Bautista, being a very, very mellow stage manager. He's the dude coordinating everything behind the curtain at Anderson's show, and he speaks in this soft, low, almost monotone whisper. It was difficult to hear him sometimes, especially if there was a music bed underneath. Now, I loved the patience that he brings with the character, creating calm amidst craziness and chaos. Now, his dynamic with Anderson, it's also great to watch. We're told very early on that they have a contentious past. But when we watch play out, it's mostly the opposite. He's gentle, respectful, almost timid, at least while the show isn't going on. When it is, he's focused and calling out all the cues with authority. Now, there are some story elements that become very apparent as the movie goes along, but these also allow Bautista to showcase a kindness that's very different from some of his other character portrayals. Now, the story, while engaging, isn't going to necessarily leave you with a smile. It's filled with more melancholy than joy or humor. That's not a negative, it's just something to be aware of because it paints for us a very real picture of somebody's life and how they navigate getting older in a profession that values youth, while also then showing the harsh reality of what can happen when choosing passion for a career over a more traditional income stream happens. I'm blown away by how Pamela Anderson washes away any previous bimbo character personas with a new, tangible, and real-life portrayal of an everywoman, facing the struggles of life with hope and determination. I do wish the dialogue would have been clearer in some scenes instead of being drowned out by background music, but this is overshadowed by the beauty of the cinematography, capturing intimacy with the characters to showcase their vulnerability and weaknesses along with their enduring strengths. And despite the somber tone, this still holds on to a hopeful outlook, leaving us with a vision of somebody who finds joy among the sadness. There's no sex, some nudity, a bunch of profanity, no violence. I give The Last Showgirl 4 out of 5 couches. So have you seen any effective character-driven stories lately? I'd love to hear about what you watched in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.